Welcome to Theory of Pets. I'm a passionate pet owner with a drive to help others like me uncover the truth about the pet industry and what goes on behind the scenes. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Theory of Pets. As you know, on this podcast, I try to reach out to experts in the pet industry to gain some insights and some knowledge for all of us pet owners with millions of questions about our dogs and cats. This week, I was able to talk to Angela Hughes, who is a doctor of veterinary medicine. She has a PhD, and she was the lead researcher of a dog DNA study recently, the largest study of its kind. And she's also a spokesperson for Wisdom Panel. Wisdom Panel is one of the leading companies in the dog DNA industry. They created the Wisdom Panel dog DNA test, which is very widely known. Dr. Hughes is also a veterinary spokesperson that can discuss the findings of the study, how they impact the future of canine treatment and health, and of course, what dog owners need to know about canine DNA and tests like Wisdom Panel. So I was excited to talk to her today, and I'm excited for you guys to listen to the interview as well. I know you were recently the lead researcher on the largest canine DNA study to date. Can you tell us a little bit about the study and the findings?
Yeah, so I was definitely one of the researchers involved in the first study of its kind and its size, to our knowledge. Over 100,000 dogs were studied and tested over the course of a little over a year, and from that data, what we found was looking at 152 genetic disorders in those dogs. What is the frequency? How often do mixed breeds versus purebred dogs carry a genetic mutation that may or may not affect them? So depending on the disorder, some diseases are recessive, where you need two copies in order to see the disorder potentially crop up, or other disorders are dominant, where you only need one copy. And what we found was mixed breed dogs in general are healthier in the sense that they are less likely to have two copies of those recessive disorders than their purebred cousins, so to speak. But the mixed breed dogs are actually more likely to carry a genetic mutation of some sort, so to have at least one copy than the purebreds, in large part probably because there's more selection pressures and more people testing and looking for these disorders in the purebred population and trying to breed away from them as they should be, than in the mixed breed population, where a lot of it's just happening willy-nilly. And so actually the dog with the most positive genetic mutations was a mixed breed dog, and they had 5 out of the 152, which is a little bit scary. But needless to say, like I said, the percentage of dogs that are likely to develop one of the genetic genetic diseases that we were testing for is closer to the 2 to 4% range, depending on whether they are mixed breed or purebred. Wow, that's amazing. That is a lot of great information.
Yeah. So how will this information affect the veterinary field going forward?
Well, there was a couple of points that we wanted to try to get across. One was that mixed breed dogs, there is something called hybrid vigor, and having little bits of various breeds generally is not a bad thing, but it does mean that you could carry along the disorders from each of those breeds, so your mixed breed could still suffer from a genetic disorder. So keep that in mind, that we can't just say, oh, well, they're a mixed breed dog, they're going to be healthy, and not think about it or worry about it. So testing them is still really helpful to give a lot of information to the veterinarian and to the client. The purebred population, obviously, we've known for a while, has got certain disorders that we need to pay attention to, and so genetic testing for them is also really helpful to understand what they are predisposed to or not. So what are the things that your breed might be predisposed to that your dog probably isn't, because they didn't inherit those genetic disorders. And then the third thing was to create a database. So we created a database called mybreeddata.com, where veterinarians or breeders or general dog owners could go and see the frequency of these disorders, these mutations in different purebred populations or in the mixed breed overall population, so you can see how common it is within a breed and what disorders have been found in that breed. So if you're looking at a new breed, say you're interested in the Labrador Retriever, and you want to see which genetic disorders might be present in that breed that your breeder will hopefully have tested for and have some information about, so that you can, be rest assured that your dog isn't going to develop that disorder. You can go here and you can see the 11 or 12 different disorders that we can test for presently that the Labradors do carry, and so you should ask your breeder about, have they tested for these and ensured that their population of puppies is not going to be affected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that a lot of pet parents don't realize, when they are looking to adopt, they just assume that any reputable breeder will test for these things, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, many of them do, and certainly most of them have the best in their heart for their breed and for their dogs. Some of them, may just need a little bit more education as to what's available and what they need to be doing. But it's always good to check and to have your research done beforehand, so that you can go and ask the right questions and get the information that you need.
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. And, going forward from that, after you adopt your pet, there are other things that parents should be aware of. I recently did the Wisdom Panel DNA test on our Beagle Molly. She was a mix. We knew the breeder. We were pretty sure that her dad was a Cocker Spaniel and her mom was a Beagle. We met both the parents, but of course, just from the look of a dog, you can't always tell. So we weren't sure farther back in her history what else we would find. The Wisdom Panel test showed that she was a 50-50 split, and it also tested, we did the because there's two different ones, correct? One that just looks at breed and one that looks more into their health.
Yeah, so we have a Wisdom Panel 3.0 and 4.0, which looks at breed ancestry, as well as one or two genetic disorders like multi-drug sensitivity and exercise-induced collapse, which are both very critical ones that owners should be aware of and keep in mind. Wisdom Panel 4.0 also goes into the traits of the dog, and then, as you mentioned, Wisdom Panel Health, which is what you did, was our ancestry, traits, and 150 plus genetic disorders, including the two I mentioned before, the multi-drug sensitivity and exercise-induced collapse.
Yeah, so we
thankfully Molly was clear for
I
all of them.
know, we were so excited to see that. You hear that, misleading stigma quite often, that mixed breed dogs are going to be healthier than purebred dogs, and we have a purebred Labrador Retriever as well. She came from somebody that we know that breeds, and she was tested as a puppy, so we decided that because we have her test results from, when she was younger, that we would try this with Molly, and we were hoping for good results. And we were really excited to see that she came out clean for everything. So that was great. But what would a dog owner expect? Because obviously not every dog is going to be negative for all of them. What information could you get from this test if your dog did test positive for one of these genetic disorders?
Yeah, for example, if we want to talk about like the Beagle, they have a couple of disorders that are a little bit more common. One of those that comes to mind is something called factor 7 deficiency. And it is still fairly prevalent in the breed. About 35% of the breed carries one copy of the dogs that we have tested to date, carries at least one copy of that genetic disorder, and about almost 5% are what we call genetically at risk, so they carry two copies. And what factor 7 deficiency is it's an inherited bleeding disorder. It's found in a number of breeds, but Beagles are very well known for it. And it's usually a fairly mild disorder, but it can have more intense or severe effects which cause excessive bleeding after trauma or surgery, that sort of thing. So it's really important for owners and veterinarians to know, so that they can take proper precautions if the dog were to be injured for some reason, or go in for even an elective surgery like a spay or a neuter. Having your veterinarian aware that you might be dealing with more than normal bleeding is important to know going in, so they can be prepared. So you would get information like that on your report. Is your dog clear? Is it positive for one copy, or is it positive for two copies, and therefore genetically at risk, and some key indicators about how to manage that condition and have that conversation with your veterinarian.
Yeah, I found that very helpful. Obviously we didn't have anything pop up with Molly, but I did show in my review, and there'll be a link underneath the podcast so people can watch that video. But you receive an email, you click on it, all of the information is there available online. It'd be really easy to take that information with you, print it out, take it with you on your cell phone, whatever you want to do, and bring it in to your veterinarian and have that conversation. And I really love that Wisdom Panel gives you those little tips and tricks for, speaking with your vet, because sometimes that can be a hard conversation for some people to have.
Definitely, but it's the conversations that we need to be having, and quite honestly, there's a lot of genetic information out there that's fairly new. So not every vet is going to have all of the details at the top of their head. So we need to engage with them and give them the information that they need to help research it more and understand it better, so that they can be better equipped to take the best care of our unique individual pet. Every dog is and every cat for that matter is a unique individual, and they're doing their very best to take care of everyone. But a lot of this information, like I said, is really new, just in the last couple of years. So if they've been out of school for more than 2 or 3 years, chances are they haven't really been exposed to a lot of it. So it's important that we have that conversation with them in a sensitive and supportive way, because we don't want to say, clearly you don't know what you're talking about, but ultimately we're all working towards the best thing for our animal.
Absolutely. We are advocates for our animals. So I think that this gives you a nice starting place. You can do some research on your own and bring it in and start that discussion. So that was great. So what can dog owners learn? Because another aspect to the Wisdom Panel is not just the health aspects, but the different traits for different breeds.
Right. So I think one of the things that sometimes sold, at least initially, is people don't always realize it, but understanding what breeds go into your dog to understand the behavior of your dog and really kind of what makes your dog tick or how they like to think, and unlocking that a little bit and understanding then what that means for their lifestyle and how you keep them in your home. For example, my own dog turned out she was a mixed breed dog that I found randomly on the streets of Portland, Oregon, and when I found her, she was not acting at all like a terrier, but I think she had been running for several miles, according to another runner that she had been following, and who knows what her nutrition status was and all that sort of thing, living out on the streets. But when she wasn't claimed at the shelter, we decided to adopt her and brought her home, and she looked very terrierish, but because of her behavior, I wasn't ready to accept that. I'm like, no, I got to see the DNA to prove that she's actually a terrier. Well, so we did the DNA testing, but as it turned out, some rest and food over the first few days really turned her into a terrier, and her DNA confirmed it. So she is actually half Russell Terrier, a quarter Australian cattle dog, and a quarter mixed. And she is every bit a cattle dog Russell Terrier mixed. She's got tons of energy. She's all about chasing those squirrels. And honestly, for me, even as a veterinary geneticist, and I know my breed, I had a quick conversation one day with a behaviorist, and she gave me some extra tips about terriers, like the fact that they really are, even more so than your average dog, a denning animal, and they like to shred things and kind of burrow under stuff. And I'm like, that explains why she keeps tearing up my $30 dog beds I get her. So what she had recommended was actually giving her shredded newspaper instead, and so that gives her more of a something that she can destroy without annoying me, and kind of create that denning space. And then we also kind of put her crate off in a corner where it's a little bit quieter and out of the way, so she doesn't feel like she has to be on alert all the time. And those things have really helped. But we also keep the blinds down in order to preserve our house from her nails if she were to see a squirrel out there. So things like that you can adapt and change and make accommodations for, so that she can have a better space in your home and you can have a happier relationship with her and all of that sort of thing, because we really want to combat people that just don't seem to get along with their dog and decide to take it back to the shelter. That's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to have a happy, healthy home for you and for your dog. And so I think the behavior component is really sometimes undersold as part of this test. So knowing what breeds go in and what their kind of quirks and ticks are can really help families make the best environment and happiest dog.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Quite often people will adopt a dog, especially if it's a mixed breed, not knowing exactly what they're getting into, and that can cause problems in the future. So knowing in advance, after you adopt your dog, if you do a test like this, then you can figure out kind of what to expect and certain things that can make their life easier, your life easier. It just makes things better for everybody.
Absolutely.
So, dog DNA testing is becoming a little bit more common. It's been around for decades, which I think a lot of people don't realize, but it is becoming more common with these over the counter tests like Wisdom Panel. What should dog owners know? Because there are different options on the market. What should they know about before choosing the best test? And what would set Wisdom Panel apart from other options on the market?
Yeah, so there are a couple different tests on the market. Wisdom Panel is been on the market for over 10 years. We're actually coming up on our 11th year anniversary here in the fall. We've tested about 1 million dogs in that time, so we've certainly tested probably the most of any company by far. And we have a very extensive breed database. So we have over 250 breeds, types, and varieties. So we can give you a lot of great information. We also have dogs from around the world. So our test is available not only in the United States, but also in Australia, the UK, Europe, some parts of Europe. So we have, in order to move into those different markets, we have to collect dogs from those markets themselves and make sure that their genetic profiles match what we have, or do we need to create new ones? So, for instance, when we moved into Australia, we actually had to create an extra, signature for the Border Collie because they did have a group of Border Collies down there that didn't match so well to our U.S. Show lines of Border Collies and our U.S. field lines of Border Collies. So having all of that information in our database of over 15,000 purebred dogs to represent these 250 different breeds makes a huge difference and improves the accuracy of the test and gives us a lot of great information to pass on to you. We also offer our trait testing, so we haven't really talked about that too much yet, but we can test for a number of different physical characteristics and traits, which can be a lot of fun for people to understand. We can't quite get to blue eyes versus brown eyes in dogs and cats yet, but for example, does your dog have a genetically upright ear, or are they, kind of base erect, where they get that kind of halfway up and down? Are they base erect because they should be fully upright, but just never quite learned how to go all the way up, that sort of thing. And then finally, obviously the health component. So that's been something we've developed more recently in the last couple of years, but that's a really critical piece to help veterinarians and clients understand the health aspects, in addition to just saying, okay, you've got a Labrador, German Shepherd, Golden Retriever mix, and those three breeds are generally predisposed to arthritis, particularly hip dysplasia. So we want to pay attention to that. Well, we can now go a little bit deeper and say, okay, which of these genetic diseases that we can test for are we also positive or negative for? For example, in that mixed breed dog, we'd be thinking about maybe exercise-induced collapse, which again is a disease that owners can help mitigate or control. So the dogs that have exercise-induced collapse, when they exercise really hard, even for a fairly short period of time, maybe 10 minutes or so, they can just, suddenly their muscles just give out and they just kind of collapse right there. And it can be really scary for folks if they don't know what's going on. I spoke with a woman who's very mixed breed dog right there with all sorts of things in this dog, and did not look at all like a Labrador Retriever, but it was positive for 2 copies of this EIC, or exercise-induced collapse, and she had 2 collapse episodes before they realized with genetic testing what the disease was, and rushed her into the veterinary clinic, the emergency clinic, going, "What's wrong with our dog, our puppy?" But if you know what it is, you can take appropriate measures to keep the dog from collapsing, or if they do collapse, to stay with them, keep them calm, let them calm down and cool down, and they should be fine within a relatively short period of time and recover. But if you don't know that, it can be really disconcerting to have it happen to you. So that sort of information is really, really helpful and critical to folks. So we just have a really extensive array of testing available to the client and through our veterinary products as well, to the veterinarians directly.
And what else should our listeners know that we haven't covered already?
Well, certainly, we are available at wisdompanel.com. Like you said, we have two different tests there. Our Wisdom Panel 4.0, which is our $85 test where people can learn about breed ancestry traits and two disorders, or if they're interested in and want to go kind of for the larger panel, the Wisdom Panel Health, that runs $149.99 on our website as well. Also available at Amazon.com. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to unlock the inner pieces of your dog's brain, so to speak, to understand their behavior, what their needs are, what their quirks are, health-wise, what that component entails, and then obviously answer the age-old curiosity question, which is, what breed is this dog, or breeds, as the case may be, which is often what drives people to do it principally, and then they can learn all this other stuff on the back end, which is great.
Absolutely. And we'll have links to just below the podcast. And when we share this on social media, it'll be right under the link that you can get onto wisdompanel.com. There's tons of great, you guys have a fantastic website, by the way. There's tons of great information on there for pet owners that are maybe thinking about doing a test, but not 100% sure. And of course, the information on the different options available if anybody's interested.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much, Samantha, for having me.
And thank you, Dr. Hughes, so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. You had some great information about canine DNA and how that's going to be affecting the veterinary field in the future. I am really excited to follow this topic. And if anybody out there listening wants to follow the topic as well, be sure to jump onto our website, theoryofpets.com. You can go back and check out all of my past podcasts, and there's going to be future podcasts coming as well, some of those relating to this topic because it's very interesting to me. While you're on our site, if you wouldn't mind, right on the sidebar, there is a place where you can go and just leave a quick review. That really helps me out when I am reaching out to experts like Dr. Hughes. I can show them that you guys are out there, you're listening, you're enjoying the podcast, and try to convince them to come on. And it would be a great idea for them to share their knowledge with our readers and our listeners. So if you wouldn't mind taking just a quick second to review it, that would really help me out. Thanks a lot for listening.